In the southern province of Tan-Li, nestled deep within the ancient valley of Banda, lies a mysterious lake known by the villagers as the Crimson Mirror. To outsiders, it might seem like just another peaceful body of water, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the drifting clouds and whispering trees. But to those born and raised in the village of Huiantoc, it was a place of superstition, of whispered legends passed down in hushed tones. On the eve of the winter solstice, an unusual gathering took place inside an old inn named the Silent Lantern. The building, cracked by time but still strong, was bathed in the flickering orange of firewood, casting eerie shadows against the paper walls. Sitting cross-legged by the hearth was a man known as Old Hac, the village's living archive of tales too dreadful to write down. Though his real name had long been forgotten, everyone knew him as the last surviving keeper of the forbidden chronicles. "You wish to know about the soul wedding?" he asked, his voice hoarse from age but sharp with memory. A group of young travelers, passing merchants, and curious locals, leaned closer. One of them, a skeptical girl named Lan An, snorted. "Ghost marriages. Sounds like something made up to scare children." Old Hac gave her a glance full of time. "What is more terrifying than what you believe is harmless? Let me tell you this: there are ceremonies not meant to be witnessed by the living." He leaned in, firelight dancing in his cataract-veiled eyes. "In the old days," he began, "there were rituals performed to wed the dead, sometimes between two corpses, sometimes between the living and the dead. These were not marriages of love. They were contracts. Bindings of energy and blood. Some performed them to bring peace to wandering souls. Others used it to make deals with demons." The room went silent, save for the occasional pop of burning wood. "It happened here," Old Hac whispered. "Just a few miles from this very inn." He took a sip of rice wine and then continued. "There is a lake that turns blood red in the winter months. And when it does, things rise from its depths." Suddenly, the wind outside howled as if in response. The door shuddered, and the travelers glanced nervously at one another. "I'm telling you," Old Hac said with a slight grin, "this is not a story. It's a warning." As if on cue, a loud knock echoed from the front door. Everyone jolted. The innkeeper, Mr. Ben, went to open it, revealing a stranger cloaked in heavy robes. His face was pale, lips blue from the cold, and eyes dark with sleeplessness. Slung on his back was a bundle of scrolls and charms, a wandering mystic named Buk. "Is there room for one more?" the stranger asked. Old Hac looked at him closely, his smile fading. "You're not just a traveler," the old man said quietly. "You're here because you felt it too, didn't you?" Buk nodded once. "The seal is weakening." Gasps rippled through the room. Lan An raised an eyebrow. "Seal? What seal?" The mystic walked to the fire and unrolled a worn scroll. It depicted an old binding sigil, drawn over the symbol of a four-horned demon submerged beneath a crimson lake. Over 8 centuries ago, a ritual was performed to imprison a being known only as Thongqui, the warlord of the abyss. He was sealed beneath the lake, kept dormant by a web of sacred talismans, elemental alignments, and the blood of monks who gave their lives. That lake. It wasn't always red. It turned red after the seal was cast, infused by the demon's wrath and the blood of his victims. Old HAC nodded slowly. I was afraid it would be tonight. Why tonight? Asked a trembling merchant. Because, Vu Kai said, the solstice aligns with the blood moon. Once every 99 years. On that night, the boundary between the spirit world and ours thins. And the seal becomes vulnerable. As the fire crackled, silence consumed the room. Somewhere outside, a low hum began to build like the moaning of spirits beneath the earth. From a distant window, a red glow lit the horizon. The moon had begun to rise, and it was not silver. It was scarlet. The blood moon hung heavy over the village of Huiantoc, casting its crimson hue over the thatched rooftops and frost-kissed trees. From the edge of the forest, a faint mist began to rise, creeping silently toward the crimson mirror lake as if drawn by an ancient calling. At the inn, tension had seized the room. Vu Kai, the wandering mystic, stood by the window, his breath fogging the glass as he watched the moon's eerie ascent. Tonight, he muttered, the boundary thins, and the lake listens. Old HAC turned to the group. You want stories, don't you? Then listen closely, for what I am about to share has never been written, only spoken in desperate whispers. He leaned in. Decades ago, 2 lovers, Mai Huang and Tan Dung, defied their families to be together. But their union was forbidden. Mai Huang had been promised to a powerful nobleman who was known to practice dark arts. When he found out, he cursed them, promising they'd be bound forever, in death. Their bodies were never found, but weeks later, the lake turned red for the first time in generations. Suddenly, the lights in the inn flickered. The group gasped. Lan On clutched her pendant. That's just coincidence, right? Vu Kai's voice was firm. No. That was the first breach of the seal. The demon feeds on grief, despair, forbidden love. Outside the inn, a figure emerged from the mist. A young boy named Min stumbled through the fog, barefoot, his eyes glazed over like sleepwalking. He muttered softly, over and over, "She's calling me, the lady in the water, she's waiting." The guards of the village saw him pass but hesitated. Such things had become more frequent lately. "Stop that boy!" Someone finally yelled. But Min broke into a sprint, running straight toward the lake. Meanwhile, inside the inn, Vu Kai suddenly froze. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "What now?" Lan On said. But before she could finish, a scream tore through the night. They rushed outside, chasing the noise. At the lake's edge, the boyman had vanished. Only his footprints remained leading into the water, where the surface was now boiling slightly, as if disturbed from below. One of the guards fell to his knees. He just walked in. Like something was calling him. Old HAC arrived moments later, breathless. This is how it begins. Vukai nodded grimly. 3 lives must be claimed to complete the awakening. Lan An's voice cracked. How do you know all this? He unwrapped a second scroll, this one darker, written in a dialect long lost. Because I was raised in the temple of the Bound Seal. We were trained to monitor the crimson mirrors across the country. There are 5. This is the last one still sealed. And it's failing. Just then, one of the villagers cried out. Over there. All eyes turned. Floating on the lake was Min's body, his mouth stretched open in a silent scream, eyes still glowing faintly red. Lan An fell back in horror. No, this can't be real. But it was only the beginning. Later that night, under the shroud of darkness, something crawled from the lake. It was not human. Its limbs were too long, too twisted. Its face bore the features of a man but had rotted into something animalistic. Its breath fogged the reeds as it moved silently toward the village outskirts. From the shadows, it watched. It waited. It remembered. Back at the inn, old HAC called a private meeting with Vukai and 2 other trusted villagers, Thao, a young spirit medium, and Master Lim, an aged exorcist who had once retired in peace but now stirred restlessly. We can't wait any longer, old HAC said. If another child dies. They won't, Vukai interrupted. I'll begin preparations. But I'll need ingredients, and time. Master Lim scoffed. You still think an ancient scroll can stop a demon that's been asleep for 800 years? If it awakens, it won't whisper. It will scream. Thao looked up. There's one more thing. I've been feeling something watching me every time I pass the lake. It's not just a presence. It's curious, intelligent, like it knows we're preparing something, like it's preparing too. They stared at each other in silence. Outside, the wind blew again. But this time, it carried a voice. A whisper no one wanted to hear. I'm coming. Home. As the dawn painted the frost-covered rooftops of Huiantoc in shades of pale gold, the villagers awoke to yet another horror. A second body had been found this time, a village girl named Mai Tuyen, barely 15. She was discovered at the base of the old willow tree by the lake, her face pale and cold, her limbs twisted unnaturally as if something had pulled her into an impossible shape. Word spread like wildfire. 2 deaths in 2 nights. Whispers filled the marketplace. The demon is rising. We should leave the village. The seal is broken. Meanwhile, back at the Silent Lantern Inn, Buyukai, Thao, and Master Leem had begun carving out a space beneath the inn's basement to begin preparations for the counter-seal ritual of Forbidden Rite. That hadn't been performed in centuries. But they weren't the only ones stirring. From deep beneath the crimson mirror, something ancient had awakened. Far beneath the surface of the blood-tinted water, in a forgotten crypt of black stone and bone, the demon known as Thongqi opened his eyes for the first time in 812 years. Chains of light still bound him, but they were flickering. His voice echoed in the minds of his minions, calling them to action. He summoned one in particular, Gai Enhung, a spirit of vengeance bound to his service. She had once been human. Betrayed and drowned by her own village, she had long become a creature of the water, her eyes glowing crimson, her hair trailing like seaweed, her voice laced with sorrow and spite. "My child," Thongqi whispered through the current. "Bring me the final soul. With the third, I shall rise." That night, Thao sat by her altar, trying to commune with the ancestral spirits of the region. She hoped to learn the location of the original seal hidden somewhere near the lake's edge. As her candles flickered, a chill crept into the room. Her breath misted. And then, a whisper came from her mirror. But it wasn't a spirit she had called. It was Gai Enhung. "You think the dead will help you?" the spirit hissed. "They are long gone. We took them. One by one. Now it is your turn." Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and a wave of icy water burst from its frame, dousing Thao and extinguishing her candles. Thao screamed, grabbing a talisman from her belt and slamming it onto the floor. The charm lit up with blazing gold, forcing the water to retreat back into the broken shards. She panted, soaked and trembling. "They've started hunting us directly," she told Buyukai when he rushed in moments later. At the same time, Lan-on, still skeptical but visibly shaken, decided to return to the lake to find answers on her own. Armed with only a lantern and her disbelief, she crept through the mist, guided by moonlight. At the lake's edge, she saw ripples. Then eyes. A face broke the surface of the waterman's face, the first boy who drowned. "Help me," he moaned. Lan-on gasped. "Min." But something was wrong. His movements were not human. His neck twisted too far. His smile was wrong. Behind him, more faces began to rise, all of them twisted, half decomposed, waterlogged. They mimicked the dead of the village. Suddenly, dozens of drowned spirits burst from the lake, crawling toward her with gurgling growls. Lan-on ran, tripping over roots and rocks, her lantern crashing to the ground. But just as one of the water spirits lunged toward her, a blast of light exploded from the tree line. Master Leem, holding an old bell etched with dragon runes, chanted in an ancient tongue. Back, servants of the abyss. The spirits hissed in agony as the bell glowed. One by one, they slithered back into the lake, oiling its surface with rage. Lan-on collapsed to the ground, sobbing in disbelief. I saw them, she whispered. They had Min's face. My Duyen, all of them. Master Leem helped her to her feet. That wasn't them. Not truly. The demon has begun twisting memories, wearing the faces of the dead like masks. Back at the village center, a new fear gripped the people. A third death would break the seal entirely. 3 nights. 3 lives. 2 had already been taken. That night, the town went into total lockdown. Every home sealed with talismans provided by Vukai. The inn became a fortress. Guards were stationed along the lake. But none noticed the small child who wandered sleepily from his home, barefoot, mumbling in his sleep. The lady in the lake, she's singing again. Midnight fell like a velvet shroud over the village of Liantoc. Under the glow of the blood moon now directly above the crimson mirror, the entire village held its breath. Guards marched through the icy streets, talismans fluttered from every doorway, and no one dared sleep. Inside the silent lantern inn, Vukai, Thao, and Master Leem had completed drawing the protection mandala in the basement, an intricate seal of ancient symbols, drawn in phoenix ash, dragon's blood, ink, and powdered obsidian. This will hold off minor spirits, Vukai explained, lighting incense at each of the 4 cardinal points, but not the Thongqi himself. If he rises, even gods might tremble. Upstairs, Lan-on couldn't rest. Despite her earlier skepticism, the face of Min's drowned form, the haunting smile of my Duyen, and the eyes of the spirit still plagued her. I need to do something, she muttered. No, Thao warned her. If you go out tonight, you may become the third soul. Lan-on shook her head. That's exactly why I should go. Better me than a child. Outside, the village was silent. Too silent. Even the wind held its breath. And then, a scream tore the silence apart. The guards stationed near the lake turned toward the sound, weapons drawn. But they were too late. The body of a guard Hugh, the youngest among them, was found half submerged at the lake's edge, eyes frozen wide, his hand reaching toward the shore, as if crawling away from something. His death marked the third soul. Back at the inn, Vukai dropped his scrolls. No. Old HAC, standing nearby, paled. It has begun. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet rumbled, not like an earthquake, but like something massive was moving deep underground. The crimson mirror began to boil, the surface rising and falling in rhythmic pulses. A low, guttural chanting echoed from beneath the water, not in any human tongue. The villagers rushed to their windows to witness the impossible. blood steam rising from the lake in spiraling tendrils, forming the shape of a serpent curling toward the sky. In the sky above, the blood moon split in two. And in that moment, the ancient seal shattered. From beneath the surface, something monstrous emerged, not fully seen, only hinted at in movement and shadow. First, a horned head. Then, an armored arm, dragging itself from the lake bed. And behind it, hundreds of lesser spirits crawled and slithered after it, their bodies twisted by centuries of rage and darkness. The warlord of the abyss Thongqui was awakening. In the center of the village, chaos exploded. Talismans burst into flames, protective wards snapped like dry twigs. Villagers screamed as shadowy figures stalked the streets, pulling at their doors, whispering through their windows. Master Leem rushed into the square, ringing his sacred bell. To me. Anyone who can fight. We must protect the children and the shrine. From the shadows, dozens of villagers rallied, armed with whatever they could find: shovels, blades, charms passed down from generations. It was a last stand. Lan-on, meanwhile, had run to the lake, determined to stop Thongqui at the source. There, she saw him rise. He was monstrous, easily 3 times the size of a man, with 3 horns curling back from a skull plated with black armor. His eyes glowed with hellfire, and in his hands, he held a blade forged of bone and sorrow. And then, he spoke. His voice was like grinding stone and thunder. You failed to bury me. You tried to forget me. Now, I will teach your bones how to remember. Lan-on trembled. She tried to speak, to pray, to move, but her legs would not obey. Then Thao appeared, holding a relic, a mirror etched with ancient sigils. She threw it on the ground. Light exploded from its surface, engulfing the demon for just a heartbeat. The demon screamed not in pain, but in amusement. Your toys cannot hurt me anymore. In a flash, he raised his arm and shattered the light with his blade. Thao collapsed, bleeding. Lan-on caught her, screaming her name. But the demon turned away. His army poured into the village. At the temple, Vu Kai stood within the protection mandala. Chanting in the old tongue, he drew power from the seals left behind by the monks who died 8 centuries ago. But the power was fading. He realized something. The seal could only be restored with a sacrifice. In the village, chaos reigned. Spirits dragged people from their homes, children screamed for parents, and the air was thick with smoke, ash, and sorrow. Then came a booming voice. Retreat to the shrine. Hold the circle. Master Leem had rallied what remained of the guards and villagers. They formed a perimeter around the ancient shrine, one of the only structures still glowing with holy symbols. In the center, Vu Kai stood, arms bleeding, lips cracked from hours of chanting. Lan-on arrived, carrying Thao. What now? She asked. We hold them off until dawn, he said. Or we all die here. And above them all, Thongqui raised his sword toward the blood moon and howled. The war for Huian-Toc had begun. The night air was thick with ash, screams, and firelight. The once peaceful village of Huian-Toc had transformed into a battlefield. Homes that had stood for generations were now engulfed in flame, their beams collapsing in showers of sparks. The villagers, desperate, terrified, but defiant, gathered at the old ancestor shrine, the last safe haven ringed in protective talismans. In the center of the shrine's courtyard, Vyukai stood within the protection mandala, bleeding from dozens of cuts, every breath of prayer, every word of his chant holding back the tide of death. Around him, Master Leem directed defenders both trained and common into formation. Lan On tended to the wounded Thao, who had yet to awaken after her encounter with Thongqui. But time was running out. From the lake, the army of the drowned marched. Hundreds of spirits twisted by centuries of pain crawled over stone walls, drifted through smoke, and advanced like a dark tide. In the center, Thongqui moved with terrifying majesty, his eyes locked on the shrine. And then he spoke. You hide in circles and candles. I was chained by blood, and I will be freed by it. He raised his massive blade, and with a wave, shattered the eastern wall of the shrine. Dozens of spirits surged forward. The battle began. Villagers armed with talismans, salt-infused arrows, and ancestral charms met the ghostly horde head-on. A blacksmith named Onglak, wielding a blessed hammer, shattered a spirit's skull with a mighty swing. Beside him, two elderly women tossed burning herbs from baskets, creating explosions of green fire that sent three specters howling back into the mist. Master Leem fought like a man possessed, his sacred bell blazing gold as it clashed with the howls of the dead. But the spirits were endless. For every one that fell, two more emerged from the lake. Lan On watched in horror as the tide pushed closer and closer to the protection mandala, where Vyukai stood pale and trembling. We can't hold them forever, she screamed. I know, he cried back. But the seal can't be restored without something we don't yet have. What? The true anchor, a piece of the original blood seal stone used 800 years ago. Lan On's eyes widened. That was lost in the lake ages ago. No, came a voice. Thao had awoken. Her voice was weak, but her eyes burned with vision. It's not lost. It's buried beneath the old Van Loc pagoda, near the western cliffs. That's outside the village. Vyukai gasped. If we retrieve it, we can rewrite the seal. Permanently, she said. Lan On stood. I'll go. No, Thao said. I'll go. You're needed here. You nearly died. And if I die finishing this, at least I won't die hiding. Vyukai quickly drew a charm of wind. Take this. It will hide you from spirits briefly. Thao took it and vanished into the smoke. Meanwhile, Thong Kui had reached the outer circle of the protection mandala. The ward shimmered violently as he raised his blade and struck. A massive ripple of dark energy exploded from the impact. The ground cracked. Statues crumbled. Blood leaked from Vu Kai's mouth as he strained to hold the chant. Enough of this, the demon growled. I shall break you all myself. He raised his arm for a second blow. Then froze. A pulse, a vibration, something ancient was calling to him. His eyes narrowed. She found it? He turned his head westward, toward the cliffs. I remember that place. Meanwhile, at the ruined pagoda, Thao crawled through brambles and crumbled stone. The once sacred temple had long been overtaken by vines and rot. But her spiritual sense led her toward the burial chamber hidden beneath a broken statue of the first head monk. She placed her hand on the stone. It glowed red. The blood seal stone, she whispered. As her fingers touched it, a blast of memory struck her visions of the original sealing ritual, monks burning alive, screams of sacrifice, and a young warrior shockingly familiar piercing Thong Kui's chest with a sword of light. She gasped. That was Vu Kai. No, not him. But someone exactly like him. The bloodline. The seal had been created by his ancestor. And now, only he could bind the demon again. Back in the village, the defenses were faltering. The western wall had fallen. Lan On stood over the bodies of fallen villagers, shaking, blood on her hands. Why are we still here? She whispered. Then a voice boomed in her mind. Because I haven't taken everything yet. Thong Kui stepped forward, his blade dragging on the stone. With a flick, he sent 3 defenders flying. The seal circle cracked. Vu Kai fell to one knee. At that moment, Thao returned glowing, levitating slightly above the ground, holding the blood seal stone in her hands. It's here. She shouted. Kai, it's your bloodline. You're the one. Vu Kai stared at her. What do I do? Write the final glyph. With your blood. He drew a blade, slashed his palm, and let it drip onto the stone. The stone absorbed it and glowed brilliantly red. Lan On grabbed Thao's hand. What's happening? Thao smiled weakly. We're giving this demon a new home, a prison of light. Vu Kai, chanting louder than ever, slammed the stone into the center of the mandala. A pillar of red gold light erupted from the earth, engulfing Thong Kui. The demon howled, raising his arms as the chains of the old seal reborn from blood wrapped around him again. You think this ends me? I am eternal. he screamed. No, Vu Kai said. Your history. The final glyph was drawn. The earth cracked. The demon vanished in a vortex of fire and wind. Silence. But not for long. Beneath the surface of the crimson mirror, far deeper than before, two glowing red eyes opened. And another voice, older, colder, more intelligent, began to whisper. For the first time in 3 nights, the village of Huiantoc was silent. No screams, no fire, no ghostly wails echoing through the trees. The lake, once boiling with crimson wrath, had returned to its glassy calm. Dawn broke over the mountains in slivers of pale gold. At the ancestor shrine, survivors emerged from hiding, their eyes hollow, their faces streaked with ash and disbelief. They had done it. Thongqui was sealed once again. But the cost was steep. Nearly a third of the village had been lost. The dead were gathered into rows, and as the monks of the shrine chanted for their souls, the survivors wept. Vu Kai sat on the shrine steps, his body trembling, his hands still stained with blood from the glyph he drew. Lan On handed him a cup of water, her own arms bruised and bandaged. You saved everyone, she whispered. No, he replied. I delayed the inevitable. Lan On blinked. What do you mean? Vu Kai stared at the lake, which now shimmered in a strangely unnatural way. There's something else. I felt it. Meanwhile, in the ruins of the Van Loc pagoda, Thao had returned alone. She walked among the broken statues and burned prayer scrolls, drawn by a sound no one else could hear, a soft hum, like wind flowing through ancient bones. She descended into the old crypt once more, guided by an unseen force. But this time, it led her deeper past the burial chamber, through a tunnel hidden by illusion, until she reached a room no one had entered in centuries. At its center stood a pillar of black obsidian, etched with glyphs not of human origin. And bound to it was a skeleton, massive, horned, armored, and motionless. But as Thao stepped closer, the glyphs flared to life. And the skeleton opened its mouth. The warlord has failed. Thao stepped back, her eyes wide. But the war has only begun. A voice echoed from the pillar, not from the bones, but from within it. He was a servant. I am the seal's master. Suddenly, shadows burst from the walls, wrapping around her limbs. She dropped her talismans, screaming, as the voice laughed. Thank you, for waking me. Back at the village, the lake began to ripple again. Not boil. Not glow. But vibrate like a drum being struck from underneath. Vu Kai stood immediately. No. From the village bell tower, a young scout called out, "There's movement in the water." The survivors gathered, staring in dread as the water parted, revealing not blood or fire, but stone. A temple, previously submerged, was rising slowly from beneath the crimson mirror. Its architecture was foreign, not Chinese, not Vietnamese, not human. Massive, black, and humming with a terrible resonance. Lan On whispered, "What the hell is that?" Bu Kai's voice was barely audible. "That's not part of the seal, that's the heart of it." Suddenly, a scream pierced the wind. "Thao!" Her voice echoed from the lake itself through no mouth, no throat. "Help me! Don't trust the stone." And then, silence. A tremor rippled across the ground. The sky darkened, though the sun was still rising. Birds fell from the air. The animals of the forest fled. And from the stone temple's mouth, a single figure stepped out. It was Thao. But something was wrong. Her eyes were completely black. Her voice was no longer her own. The world above has forgotten. But the world below remembers. The one who hungers, is coming. She raised her arm and dozens of red-eyed spirits exploded from the temple, this time wearing not the faces of villagers, but monks, children, warriors, those who had died in the ancient war. Lan On screamed, "That's Thao. She's possessed." "No," Bu Kai said, voice cracking. "She's being used as a vessel." In the temple depths, the true enemy stirs. His name long forgotten, now only known as Kagam Dualap Kuang, the one who growls beneath the mirror. A primordial being, bound not by monks, but by gods. A being older than death, born from hatred, fed by blood. Thong Kui was his general. The lake, was his eye. The seal, was never complete. Only hidden. Until now. The Black Temple stood like a nightmare birthed from the lake's depths. Its architecture bent reality itself, angles that shouldn't exist, shadows that fell in the wrong direction, and walls that pulsed, like a sleeping beast. Villagers stood frozen at the shore, unable to breathe as the temple slowly rose to its full height, surrounded by mist and whispering winds. In the center of the temple gate stood Thao, or rather, the entity wearing her like a cloak. From behind her, spirits in tattered monk robes and shattered armor emerged, no longer human, no longer even hateful. They were empty, vessels of the one beneath. Bu Kai clutched the blood seal stone, still warm in his hand. "If Thao's soul is still inside," he whispered, "we can bring her back. But to do that, we need to go in." Lan On stared at the monstrous gates. "Into that?" "Yes," he said. "To stop what comes next, we go into the mirror." That night, under a shattered moon, a small party was formed. Bu Kai, carrying the seal and bloodline of the original binder. Lan On, whose spiritual sensitivity had been awakened. Master Lim, who carried the last remaining dragon fire talisman. And a new ally, Brother Kien, a wandering monk who had arrived that morning after following visions of fire and water. I saw your village in my dreams, he said. I believe I am meant to help. The descent begins. Crossing the lake to the temple was like entering another world. The air turned heavier, thick with energy that clung to the skin. The temple floor was made not of stone but compressed bones, etched with countless eyes that blinked and wept blood. Inside, no torches were needed. The temple lit itself with a sickly green glow from within its walls. Strange glyphs pulsed in time with an invisible heartbeat. Each step they took was met with whispers not in a known language, but understood nonetheless. Flesh is fleeting. Fear is nourishment. He remembers you. They passed halls filled with statues of non-human creatures, beings with tentacles, antlers, twisted limbs, and faces that looked almost human. This place was not built by any mortal hand, Master Leem muttered. The mirror chamber. At the heart of the temple, they arrived at a massive chamber. Floating in the center was a vertical pool of liquid mercury, rippling slowly like a vertical pond. Thao stood in front of it, unmoving. Around her, black chains of mist kept her levitating in the air. From the mirror, a face began to form. It had no features, only shifting shapes, a fusion of many, a child's smile, an old man's frown, a woman's scream, a beast's hunger. Ah, the voice said. You brought the stone. You brought the blood. All you need now, is to make the choice. Give Thao back. Lan On shouted. She was the door. You opened it? The debt is sealed. Now she is mine. No, Bu Kai growled, stepping forward. You are nothing but a parasite feeding off pain. We're not afraid of you. The entity's tone sharpened. You should be. For I am not a general like Thong Kui. I am the first. I am the mirror. I am the mouth the gods could not close. The chamber shuddered. Chains whipped through the air. The mirror screamed. Suddenly, Thao's body convulsed. Her real voice broke through. Kill me, while you still can. Lan On cried out. No. Bu Kai raised the blood seal stone and drew a circle mid-air. If I bind him to me, maybe I can drag him back. Master Leem turned. Don't. If you fail, he'll consume you whole. Then help me succeed. They began the chant. The binding. Brother Qian struck the mirror with the dragon fire talisman. A burst of golden flames erupted, burning the entity's chains and loosening its grip on Thao. Bu Kai's chant grew louder, faster, desperate. The mirror screamed. Thao fell from mid-air. Lan On caught her. But now the face in the mirror raged. You think I can be bound again? I have already crossed into your world. I am within you. The room exploded. Darkness rushed out in all directions. Time stopped. Bukai stood alone in a grey void, and before him stood a child version of himself, crying. "You left me behind," the boy said. "What is this?" "This is the first crack in your soul," the voice replied. "I know all your fears, and I will wear them like a skin." But Bukai held up the blood seal stone. "No. You can show me my fear, but you cannot control my will." He pressed the stone to his chest and screamed. In the real world, a light exploded from his body, red and gold, swirling into a blazing tornado. The mirror cracked. The voice shrieked, and the temple began to collapse. "Get out!" Master Leem shouted. They ran, carrying Thao, dragging Bukai's unconscious body. The roof fell. The walls screamed. The mercury mirror shattered into dust. They reached the lake's edge just as the temple sank back into the water, disappearing below the surface once more. Silence. 3 days later, the village was rebuilding. Bukai finally awoke, weak but alive. "You sealed it again," Lan-on said. "How?" He looked to the lake. "I didn't seal it," he said. "I redirected it back into the place it was born. It's asleep now, but only just." Thao, still recovering, added, "But the worst is still to come." Lan-on blinked. "How could it get worse?" Thao looked up, her eyes distant. "Because next time, it won't need a mirror to cross." It had been exactly 40 days since the sinking of the temple and the second sealing of the mirror demon. Huian had begun to breathe again, children laughing, markets reopening, the scent of warm buns returning to the streets. But beneath the surface, something stirred. At dawn, in the northern province of Thachlang, a well-known temple monastery Tien Tam Ko Tu collapsed without warning. Monks inside were found drained of life, their bodies left in kneeling positions, hands still clasped in prayer. And burned into the stone at the center of the ruins, was a single glyph. The same glyph as the crimson mirror seal. Meanwhile, at Huian Bukai was plagued by visions. Every night, he dreamed of black staircases descending endlessly, of cities made of bone, and of voices calling him. "Kai, you are the key. We sealed 5. One has broken. Another is opening." One morning, Thao stormed into his room, holding an old scroll. "Remember the temple we saw beneath the lake?" she said. "It's not the only one. There were 5 sanctums, built centuries ago across the country. Each was a lock." Lan-on joined them, bringing reports from wandering monks. 3 of those temples have recently fallen silent. Bukai's eyes narrowed. Then something is trying to unlock them all. The journey begins. Within 2 days, the trio departed Huiantoc, accompanied by Brother Qian and 3 new companions. Deep Mok, a former demon hunter, exiled for using forbidden weapons. Tuan, a boy orphaned by the mirror demon, who now possessed strange visions. Bale, an elderly woman once thought mad, now revealed to be a spiritual medium who spoke fluently with the dead. Their destination, Long Kuyet Mountain, where the second seal was said to be hidden beneath Dong Huiet Le, the Cave of Bleeding Tears. The Cave of Bleeding Tears. Atop the mountain, they found the entrance covered in vines and long abandoned. But the further in they went, the more wrong the air felt, as if reality thinned. The walls were wet not with water, but with blood fresh and warm. "It's weeping," whispered Tuan. "The earth is crying because something below remembers." They reached the heart of the cave. A massive stone door, sealed shut by a pentagram of fire, stood before them. Etched into the stone, 5 names. One of them was Vukai. "How?" Deep Mok touched his blade. "You were chosen generations ago." Thao stepped forward. "We're not here to ask questions. We're here to keep it closed." But it was too late. The door was already cracked. Suddenly, a gust of freezing wind blew through the cave. The torches flickered and died. And from the shadows, emerged a figure cloaked in rags. He removed his hood. He had no eyes, only holes dripping black mist. His lips were stitched shut. He raised his hand. From the ground, a swarm of spirit locusts burst forth, shrieking in rage. "Form the circle!" Master Leem shouted. "Now!" The group moved quickly, Vukai in the center, drawing a bloodline glyph with his own blood, while Deep Mok fought off the swarm with his silver-bladed whip. The cloaked man watched, then began to chant without a tongue. The entire cave shook. The stone door glowed. And from the crack, something reached out. A hand. A hand made of scales, black bone, and embedded teeth. The voice returns. "Second gate, breached." The scaled one approaches. Lan On felt it in her spine, the same energy as Thong Kui, but older, colder, more reptilian. "This isn't like before," she muttered. "This one, it's ancient." Thao shouted over the chaos. "He's one of the 5 lieutenants of the Hollow King. This one is Xadoa. The serpent who consumes time." Suddenly, a black coil burst through the door crack, wrapping around Deep Mok's arm. He screamed in agony, his skin turning gray. But he smiled through the pain. No better death than dying while stopping it. With a final cry, he plunged his blade into the glyph at the cave's heart, activating the lock. The pentagram exploded in red light. The coil retracted, shrieking in pain. The door began to reseal. The spirit locusts fell dead. Silence returned. Deep Mok lay motionless, his blade still glowing. Return to fire. They returned to the village of Long Kuyet with news of Deep Mok's sacrifice. In silence, they lit incense for him. Bale declared. 1 lieutenant bound. 4 remain. Tuan added, in a trance, and 1 is already awake. Not far from here. They turned to him. Where? Bu Kai asked. The boy blinked, then whispered. Inside the capital. Under the old royal tombs. Where the Emperor of 1,000 Eyes still dreams. 3 weeks had passed since the second seal was nearly broken. The group, now without Deep Mok, continued their journey toward the ancient capital of Lactium, guided by the visions of Tuan the boy who now dreamed not only of spirits but of dead kings. Whispering in his sleep, they traveled in disguise. Word had spread of their actions at Huyen Toc and Long Kuyet, and not everyone saw them as heroes. At the capital's outer gates, Brother Kien turned to the others. This city has its own ghosts. The Forbidden Tombs. They arrived at the Dalang Huyen by a forbidden burial ground beneath the old palace, sealed for centuries by the imperial court. Legend said that the final emperor of the Suang Triu, Huang de Van Nan, the thousand-eyed emperor, had been entombed alive after he delved too far into the occult. He had traded his eyes for visions, his soul for immortality. And when his reign turned to madness, he was betrayed, bound, and buried, not with honor, but in fear. Thao opened the ancient scroll. 4 seals marked this place, each tied to an element. But one has already been broken. Bu Kai looked down the marble steps. Then we need to reach the tomb before the others do. Palace of Masks. Inside the underground complex, the architecture was unlike any they'd seen. Mirrors lined the ceilings, each one angled toward altars of obsidian. The air smelled like old iron and incense. Murals depicted a man with hundreds of eyes sewn across his chest, neck, palms, even his tongue. Lan On shivered. This isn't a tomb. It's a prison. Suddenly, footsteps. Soldiers. But not living. Ghosts clad in ceremonial armor, faces hidden beneath lacquered masks, moved in synchronized silence. Their eyes glowed dimly from behind slits. Defilers, one hissed. You would unchain him. No, Bu Kai replied. We're here to keep him bound. Then prove it. Face the trial of the faithless. Trial of the faithless. The group was separated by illusion. Each member found themselves alone, facing phantoms of guilt, betrayal, and memory. Lan On saw her childhood self, mocked by peers for her spiritual madness. Thao faced the shade of her sister, blaming her for letting the demons rise. Brother Qian relived the burning of his own monastery, his failure. Bu Kai stood in a flooded room, with the image of his father floating dead, whispering, "You carry a curse, not a gift." But one by one, they overcame the illusions not by denial, but by embracing their scars. As they regrouped, the ghostly guards bowed and vanished. "You may proceed," to the eye. The throne of blinks. At the heart of the tomb was a throne carved from a single piece of white jade, now cracked and stained. Upon it sat a corpse, or so it seemed. But the moment Bu Kai stepped forward, the eyes opened, all of them. Dozens. Hundreds. Some blinked. Others wept. Some even rolled, as if staring into the souls of the intruders. The corpse moved. "I have waited," it said. "For centuries. For my heir. For my mirror." Lan On screamed. "He's alive." "No," Thao whispered. "He's undying." The emperor stood. His body did not rot, nor breathe. He was suspended by sheer hatred and dark rituals carved into his bones. "I was not sealed. I was betrayed. The court feared my visions. But I saw it. The Hollow King. The 5 gates. I tried to protect this land, by ruling it forever." He turned to Bu Kai. "You carry my blood." "What?" "I was the first binder. You are the last." The betrayer revealed. Suddenly a voice from behind. "Enough of this farce." A figure entered. Brother Qian. But something was different, his eyes had changed. "I never sought to bind them," he said. "I sought to release them. The world needs cleansing. The gods abandoned us long ago. But the Hollow King remembers." The others backed away. "You planned this," Thao said, voice shaking. Qian smiled. "The second gate was a test. I let Deep Mock die. And now, I've brought you here, to awaken the third." He raised a black talisman and drove it into the floor. The entire tomb screamed. The jade throne cracked open. The emperor collapsed, free. The escape. The walls bled. The ghosts screamed. The group ran, dragging the emperor's body with them, now pulsing with energy. "He's still bound to the seal," Thao shouted. "We can use him." As they reached the surface, soldiers from the modern capital intercepted them, having tracked their movements for weeks. "What have you done?" the general screamed. "Do you know what you've released?" "No," Bu Kai said. but we know what's coming. He looked back at the tomb's now glowing entrance. The third seal has cracked. 2 remain. But 1 has already shattered in secret. From the northern mountains, a dark cloud was forming. Far to the north, beyond the hills of Lakfung and past the border of known maps, there existed a place few dared speak of. Gentlerain Batan, the endless battlefield. It was once the site of a war so fierce, even time refused to continue. When the 5 gates were sealed, the 4th gate Phong and Bangtam was buried under this very land. The generals who fought to keep it closed, never left. Because they never truly died. Arrival in the north. Vukai, Lan On, Thao, Tuan, and the weakened but still living Emperor of 1,000 Eyes trekked north for 6 days, accompanied now by a new ally, Cam Yen, an exorcist warrior of the ancient. Bok Ho Jiao, known for sealing wraiths in sacred armor. The snow fell thicker with each mile. Strange shadows flickered in the white mist, and songs of war echoed through the mountains, songs no human had sung in centuries. At the edge of the battlefield, they found rows of frozen corpses standing upright, soldiers trapped mid-charge, faces frozen in fear and fury. Thao knelt. "They're not dead," she whispered. "They're stuck." Lan On touched a blade half buried in snow. It was warm. The field awakens. At dusk, the wind shifted. The corpses blinked. One by one, ancient warriors began to move, not decayed, not resurrected, but still locked in their final fight, reliving the same battle for 1,000 years. 2 ghostly generals rode flaming steeds across the ridge, one dressed in jade, the other in iron black. Their weapons clashed mid-air, sending shock waves across the snow. "Get back!" Cam Yen shouted. The group formed a circle, but the battlefield sucked them in, each person falling into a different illusion. Lan On found herself among warrior women, slashing against endless demons. Thao stood as a battlefield medic, reliving every soul she failed to save. Vukai became a general, commanding troops who looked like his ancestors. Tuan walked through rows of bleeding spirits, who all whispered his name. Cam Yen faced herself in armor, but her reflection had black eyes. In the center of it all stood the gate, a colossal, jagged tier in the sky, suspended above a blood-red altar, held shut by 4 spears driven into the earth by immortal warriors. The 4th seal was still intact. But one of the spears was cracking. The Shatterer returns. Suddenly, the illusion snapped. Brother Qian appeared once more, riding a nightmare beast made of ash and bone. He had harnessed the power of the 3rd gate, corrupted by the Emperor's essence. "You brought the seal here," he sneered. "You led me to the 4th. You betrayed us." Vukai shouted. "No," Qian said, his voice no longer fully human. "I awakened us." He raised a twisted blade of bone and hurled it into the cracking spear. The ground quaked. The 4th seal shattered. From the altar, the sky split, and down descended the fourth lieutenant of the Hollow King, Bang Kui, the Frost Warden. A towering figure wrapped in tattered flags of all nations, face hidden by a mask of frost, arms formed from chained bodies. The war never ended, it said. Only the living forgot. The last stand on the ice. With no time to plan, the group launched a desperate assault. Kamyen channeled her Bakho spirit, clashing with the Frost Warden in blinding bursts of white energy. Thao and Lan On worked to reconstruct a temporary seal from battlefield relics, invoking the spirits of ancient generals to empower it. Vu Kai, wielding the blood seal stone, called upon the memory of his ancestor, the first general, to strike this very ice 1,000 years ago. The Frost Warden howled, freezing air into blades. Kamyen was thrown across the field, her armor shattered. Tuyen, in desperation, screamed and summoned the ghosts of the battlefield. They rose. Hundreds. Thousands. The forgotten army. Command us, one said. For one final charge. Vu Kai raised his arm. For the seal. They charged. Ghost versus Frost. Light against time. At the center, Kai drove the blood seal stone into the broken spear base, pouring his own life force into it. The spear rekindled, reborn in crimson fire. The gate shuddered, reclosed. The Frost Warden was pulled back into the rift, roaring. The war is not done. With one final shriek, it was sealed once more. The frozen silence. The battlefield stilled. The spirits saluted, and vanished. The snow fell gently. Only the wind remained. Vu Kai collapsed, barely breathing. The fourth gate had held. For now. But far to the south, deep in an abandoned jungle shrine, something awoke. A being unlike the others. It didn't command armies. It didn't crave power. It simply consumed. The fifth seal has already been broken. And now, I hunger. In the southern jungle province of Tam Nguyen, long forgotten by mapmakers and erased from official history, lay the ruins of Muviohan, the Temple of the Soulless. No records remained of its founding. The local tribes whispered legends, calling it the place where even ghosts refused to stay. And now, it was waking. Nightmares without sleep. Since sealing the fourth gate, the group had returned to a temporary safe house in Tongia Valley. Vu Kai remained unconscious, his spirit trapped between life and something far worse. Thao and Lan On watched over him, praying he would awaken before the final tide rose. But Tuyen had already seen it. He stopped sleeping. Each time he closed his eyes, he awoke inside someone else's dream, a dream that ended in screaming, always the same final whisper. He eats. He learns. He becomes. One night, he stood and spoke in a voice not his own. The fifth seal was not broken, because it was never made. That thing was never bound. It was only forgotten. Journey to Tom Nguyen. Following clues from the Emperor's visions, and a forgotten passage in the Seal Codex, the group journeyed to the south. Even the Emperor feared this path. You think sealing is the worst fate? There are things the gods let run free, out of mercy. As they entered Tom Nguyen, time warped. Birds flew backward. Shadows moved on their own, even without bodies. Entire trees pulsed like beating hearts. The ruins of Muviohan stood like broken bones, half sunken into the swamp. But at the center, floating above an altar of bloodstone, was a sphere. Not magical. Not divine. Just alive. It pulsed. And with each pulse, something nearby died. The eater. They didn't see it at first, because it had no shape. It was hunger made flesh. A blur in the corner of vision, always out of focus, but undeniably present. Lan On suddenly turned pale. Did you hear that? Hear what? Asked Thao. Something, calling me by name. But from inside my own memory. Then one by one, they forgot something important. Thao forgot her sister's face. Lan On forgot her childhood. Even the Emperor forgot his name. Only Tuan remained untouched. He doesn't feed on children, he said. Because children have no full soul yet. Only fragments. Suddenly, the blur solidified. A mass of faces fused together, screaming, some laughing, others praying. The Soul Eater had taken form. You bring me the final binder, it rasped. Let him wake, so I may feast. The last awakening. At that moment, Bu Kai awoke. But not in the physical world. In a liminal space, a black ocean stretching endlessly in all directions. A single raft floated beneath him. There, he saw his father, mother, ancestors each offering him a part of themselves. You carry all of us now, they said. We cannot fight him for you. But we can become the seal. Bu Kai opened his eyes in the real world. The blood seal stone shattered in his hand, its power absorbed into his veins. His body glowed with ancestral light, thousands of souls burning in unison. You want a soul? He said to the eater. Then take mine. He stepped forward. The choice. But the Soul Eater hesitated. Because in that moment, Bu Kai was not prey. He was poison. All the broken, lost, sacrificed souls fused into him. He was no longer just a binder. He was the last chain. The eater lunged. Time stopped. Vyukai screamed a single word to awaken, and released everything. The soul fire seal. The sky burned. A white explosion consumed the jungle. The temple collapsed into light. The eater screamed, splintered across dimensions. The group was thrown back miles. And when they woke, Vyukai was gone. Only his pendant remained smoldering with the last glyph, Nyemlin Seal of Souls. Aftermath. Weeks passed. The fifth gate was never found. Because it never existed. Instead, Vyukai had become the seal himself, binding the eater across planes. But in doing so, he had transcended mortality. Legends say he now walks between worlds, unseen, keeping balance. A warden not of seals but of souls. And far beyond even him, something else stirred. A whisper from the Hollow King himself. They sealed my generals. But they forgot me. I remember everything. 1 month had passed since the Soul Eater was bound by Vyukai's sacrifice. The world was quiet. Too quiet. No more dreams. No more visions. No more whispers in the wind. But to those who had walked through fire, silence wasn't peace, it was a warning. Signs of the end. Thao wandered the lands of Huientoc, lost in purpose. Every time she passed an altar or temple, the fires burned black. Offerings rotted instantly. Children born in these days came without shadows. Lan-on had retreated into the northern monasteries, meditating endlessly. She now glimpsed realities beyond this world, fractals of consciousness where other binders once failed. Tuan had stopped speaking. He now drew symbols in the dirt, never the same, but always leading to one word: crown. Kamyen, traveling across cities, discovered the armor of Bakho warriors melting, sacred talismans losing power. And in the Emperor's final vision before his body turned to dust, he saw only this: a throne of bone, on an ocean of silence. A world out of time. In the center of the continent, once lush with rice fields and forests, a crater had formed. No tremor. No explosion. Just absence. The earth simply vanished. What remained was a spiral staircase made of air, descending into nothingness. Lan-on knew this was the path. This is where he's returning, she said. Not through a gate, but through the void left behind by belief. Because while the binders had sealed the demons, the world had stopped believing in the seal. And that was all the Hollow King needed. The descent. The final group assembled. Lan-on, the last seer. Thao, the guardian of names. Tuan, the prophet child. Kamyen, the broken warrior. And shadows of the past, echoes of Vyukai, following like starlight. They descended the spiral, deeper than depth. Every step, they lost a memory. Their birthdays. Their first loves. Their families. Their names. At the bottom stood a throne of shifting faces. And atop it, a man. No, something in the shape of a man. The Hollow King. Crowned with nothing. Smiling with everything. The final dialogue. You come to stop me? He asked, without voice. Lan-on stepped forward. You are the echo of cruelty. A mistake of divinity. You are hollow because you were meant to be filled, but you chose hunger. He laughed. I did not choose. I simply became. You name me monster, but I was once hope. When the gods left, who listened to your prayers? I did. Thao, you twisted them. I answered them. Kamyen raised her broken blade. Enough words. Then give me your souls. The throne pulsed. A wave of unreality swept toward them. The final battle. The ground became thought. The air became memory. And the Hollow King became every failure they'd ever had. He took the face of Thao's dead sister. He spoke in the voice of Lan-on's mother. He wore Vu Kai's old uniform. He carried the screams of every child Tuan couldn't save. He smiled with deep Mock's dying grin. The group fought not with weapons but with who they were. Lan-on opened her third eye, seeing the Hollow King as nothing but need. Thao burned her own name, breaking her link to the world, becoming pure wool. Kamyen shattered her blade, letting go of vengeance, allowing peace in. Tuan walked into the king, offering his untouched soul willingly. No pain? The king asked. No, said the boy. Only understanding. The Hollow King screamed. The seal of the self. From the void, Vu Kai returned, but not in body. He came as a ring of ancestral fire, surrounding the king. The group joined hands. No chance. No blood. No gods. Only decision. We don't seal you, said Lan-on. We accept you. As our fear. As our flaw. As the hunger we all deny. The Hollow King tried to flee. But there was nowhere left. Because he was not outside them. He was inside. And now, he had no place to hide. With one unified will, they became the final gate. Not stone. Not magic. Human choice. And in that moment, the Hollow King disappeared. The dawn. The world breathed again. The temples relit. The children cried for the first time in weeks. The fields grew. And somewhere, on a quiet hill, a girl with no name watched the sun rise. In her hand was a pendant, warm to the touch, pulsing softly. She didn't know where it came from. But when she touched it, she remembered a word. Cut. Centuries passed. People told stories about a time when the world almost ended, about warriors who fought monsters of shadow, about seals and stones and souls. But eventually, those stories faded, until they were just myths. Then songs. Then silence. And in that silence, a whisper. When fear returns, the gate reopens. And so shall we. Clapperboard title: The Five Seals of the Hollow King, a Soulbound Chronicle. Scroll description: In a forgotten land where demons rise and the gods have gone silent, 5 ancient seals once held back an evil that feeds on fear, memory, and the human soul. When the first gate breaks, a reluctant warrior named Vyukai is thrust into a centuries-old battle to protect humanity from the Hollow King's vengeful return. Joined by mystics, exorcists, and haunted children, they journey through cursed tombs, frozen battlefields, and jungles of madness to stop each lieutenant of the dark. But as the gates fall one by one, it becomes clear. The final gate was never built. The final monster was never sealed. And the final hope lies not in magic but in choice.